what I'll just do as we kind of slowly let everybody in is ask everyone to introduce themselves, starting with me. So my name is Molly Chambers. I'm really happy to have you all here this morning, and I'll be sort of doing the, I don't know, hosting, not very professional, but I'll be taking part in this webinar and going through the agenda now. But I will pass on to our lovely speakers. Rebecca, you're off mute. Do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Hi everybody, I'm Rebecca and I'm a project development coordinator and I've been working for NEA for about 14 years.
Thanks, Rebecca. Becky, do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
I can indeed. Hello everyone, I'm Becky, so I'm a training officer for NEA, so I'll be taking 2 of the sessions today, so looking forward to them. Thank you so much for coming.
Perfect. And Ailsa, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself, but Ailsa will be speaking, but you will see a pop up in the Q&A section. Just a reminder to please use that function to ask any questions. Because of the webinar function, we can't take people off mute, but if you do ask questions in there, we'll try our best to answer as many as possible. So it's about 3 minutes past. I'm going to quickly start with my slides because we've got quite a packed agenda today. And just so you know, this session is being recorded, and we will endeavour, tech allowing, to share this on our YouTube channel afterwards, so that if anyone missed it and would like to go back to any sections, or you want to send it to any of the members of staff that you work with, you can access that. So I'm just going to share my screen. Becky, could you give me a nod if you can see my slides? Perfect, thank you. So, yep, thanks everyone for being here. Some of you may have attended the winter domestic energy advice bootcamp that we ran. That was really focused on preparedness for winter and kind of those main energy advice topics that we thought were important to cover. What I'm really proud of in this bootcamp that we ran is that it's really a marriage of our operations team and our frontline delivery and our training team and all the brilliant things that they have to offer. So I hope it's useful for that, thinking about, you know, next year's delivery, not so much in crisis mode, but thinking about how to deliver really effective energy advice in communities. So just go into the agenda. So you are currently being welcomed. And then we'll move on to Becky, who's going to run a bit of a taster course to one of our training courses, Changing Energy Related Behaviour. And then to follow on from that in a sort of complementary session, Rebecca Jones is going to go through some of her advice for working in communities and how to deliver really effective interventions. Then we will take a 15-minute break and come back after the break to another spotlight on renewable technologies. So a little bit more content heavy, hopefully things that you can use and take away to give advice on. And then we're very lucky that we'll be joined by Jenny Shrewsbury from the Good Practice Mentor Programme to talk a little bit about that before we leave as well. And we will be leaving around about 12, maybe 12:05. And we'll try and keep to a really tight schedule today. So just a few bits of information about today's session. So please do use the Q&A function. Myself and Ailsa will be keeping an eye on that as much as we can. Anything we can't answer in today's session, we will take away and follow up afterwards. In terms of the regulatory background and government support, most of the information most strongly relates to England and to Wales, but obviously for the community-based advice, that would be relevant anywhere. I just want people to have that kind of concept going in. Again, if you haven't already, if you joined afterwards, if you'd like to access British Sign Language interpretation today, please click the interpretation button on your Zoom ribbon, and you'll be able to select British Sign Language, and we have 2 lovely British signers here today who'll be able to make the session more accessible for you. And following on from this session, we will be sending out a survey just to evaluate how you found the session. Today's agenda is largely built off of last surveys outputs. So if you continue to kind of use those as a way to help us shape these sessions, that would be really useful. And obviously any possible content that we can send will also be sent as a follow-up with the rest of the information, including the Q&A and the recording and the evaluation. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now. Very quick introduction here. Becky, are you happy to go into your slides?
I am indeed.
Okay.
Right, hopefully you can see that all okay. Let me just bring up what I need to. All right then. Well, hello everyone. How are we doing? So good morning. Thank you so much for attending, and thank you, Molly, for that introduction. So yeah, thanks again so much for attending. Whether you're new to our boot camps or you've returned, thank you so much for coming back. There's quite a few familiar names on the participant list. So if we have met before, hello. If we haven't, then welcome. So this sort of first session, it is loosely based on our course, Changing Energy Related Behaviour. I've sort of changed it a little, making advice a little bit more effective. It's the idea that we give really great advice. Let's be honest, we give really great advice to householders, to families, to people, but they don't always take it into account. Okay, they don't use that advice. Maybe they don't use as much of it as they should. And if people are struggling, we want them to be taking up that advice. Now, there are times that we provide advice, basically, and we later realize, what was the point of it? What was the point in giving all that stuff if they are still struggling after it? Now, the reason for that is there's lots of reasons, really, and we'll get into a couple of them. But basically, it's human nature. Okay, it's human nature that we won't change certain behaviors unless something else happens. So that's what we're really going to be looking into today, and seeing how we as advisors can support people to make those changes, essentially. So we're thinking, why won't our behaviors change? We give advice, people don't change. Why? What's happening? Okay, so before we get into making our advice more effective, I would like to introduce you to Mary and Joe. So Mary and Joe, they're both in their late 20s. They have one son, 2 years old. Joe works full-time and Mary is a stay-at-home parent. They live in a former local authority, 1970s built, semi-detached property. Obviously, energy bills are high. They're high for everyone. They're worried about those, but they're also worried about falling behind in their mortgage payments, which, a lot of families are going through right now. They've got no savings for repairs, and they've got no savings to deal with unexpected bills. So if Mary and Joe came into your clinic, came into your office, came to you and asked for help, what might be the reasons why they won't take up your advice? Well, there are lots, okay? And some things you might not even maybe think about, you may not even realize. So let's have a chat about them. Let's have a look at their child. So they've got a 2-year-old. I don't have kids. I do have a dog. He is extremely stressful. I love him to the end and back, to the moon and back. I love him so much, but he is very, very stressful. A baby is going to demand so much more attention than a pup, okay? 2 years old, I can imagine they're running around at this point. So that's one factor. They're busy. Let's take a look at the money factor here. So there's a single income there, and obviously we know that they've got no savings. They've simply not got enough money to deal with any issues coming up, or if something goes wrong, because it is absolutely typical. If you say, right, put some insulation into the wall, put some cavity wall insulation, you start doing the work and then a problem comes up. You find another issue, absolutely typical. But that problem might be something they cannot afford. So they want to be focusing on paying, the mortgage. They want to be focusing on, working with the kids and, looking after their child. They're not going to want to deal with the stress and hassle of something going wrong here, okay? It could, of course, the reason why they might not take up your advice if you say, oh, just do this, or change your boiler settings, or do a few behaviour changes around the house, based on your energy efficiency. They might do that because they don't think they need to. So think about their age. They're both in the late 20s. They're still young. They're still babies themselves. They're still learning, perhaps. They may simply not know about energy efficiency or maybe the need to be efficient. They live in a 1970s sort of ex-local authority property, standard efficiency rating. They might have been told that, oh, there's nothing really you can do to make it better. They might not see a reason to change what they're doing or something to their house. Could, of course, be the lack of knowledge too. Again, they might not know they need to be more energy efficient, but that knowledge factor, you know, many of the terminologies, the options can seem confusing. If someone said to you, if there's a scheme, what scheme out there will help me make my home more efficient? Well, there's Eco, there's LAD, there's, you know, Nest, there's loads of different schemes. But each of them have got different criteria, different eligibility things, different measures. It's very confusing to a lot of people. So this just gives us a small snapshot, essentially, into one family's life. So we want to have a look at what other factors might be influencing us. And this is, again, something we maybe don't think about when we give people a list, you know, do 10 things to make your home more energy efficient. And we maybe don't think about what's going on and what's happening around that householder to make them not do what they need to, essentially. So, as you can see, lots can affect our uptake of advice and doing different things. So a few of these we saw before with Mary and Joe there. So, as I said before, as advisors, we need to be aware of these factors. If a client comes to us with a problem, we might give them a solution and think, wow, that was, you know, a silly little thing. That's very, very easily fixed. But to them, it's a massive deal. It's a massive thing to change and to deal with. It's not always easy to change what we're doing. It's human nature. So let's have a look at some of these. Cost, self-explanatory, all right? If something costs too much, people are not going to take it up if they think they can't afford it. So if you tell me I can buy something for £500 now and it's going to save me £100 every year, I'm not going to think about that £100 I'm saving. I'm going to be thinking about the £500 I currently cannot afford, all right? Attention deficit. People have other priorities. People have their attention turned to different things. You know, I don't think about turning my TV off at the wall at night. I think about taking the dog outside, making sure he's okay before we go to bed. If you've got children, you're not going to think about turning the toaster off at the wall or turning all the lights off. You're going to be thinking, have the kids had a bath? Have they got everything ready for school tomorrow? Are they getting, you know, everything they need? Have I packed their school lunch? That sort of thing. People's attention is placed on other things. Social norms is another thing that influences us. We are influenced by other people. If they're not doing something, we're not going to do that either. And vice versa. So if you told me, oh, why don't you get, for example, solar panels? Why don't you get them? I'm going to think, well, no one in my neighborhood has got them. Am I going to look a bit weird if I get solar panels? And we might think, as advisors, we might think, well, that's silly. That's a silly thought. But that's human nature. That's how we think about things. Context, circumstance is also a really big one to keep in mind, and that's how we need to be making sure that we're thinking about that before we offer advice. Is the person a tenant in a rented home? If so, they're probably not going to get that really expensive cavity wall insulation currently on offer. They don't own it. There's no point really chasing the landlord to get that work done and disrupt everything if they're only going to be in that house for 6 months or so. So you really need to think about what's going on. Hassle, friction, same sort of vibe here. People don't want hassle. When my landlord came to change my boiler 18 months ago, all I could think of, instead of, yay, I'm getting a new boiler, it's going to be a bit warmer in here, everything's going to run a bit more efficiently. Instead of thinking that, all I could think of was, I'm going to have to move my microwave, I'm going to have to make him a cup of tea, I'm going to have to do the washing up. I put it off. I kept on saying, can you come back next week? How about the week after? Are you sure you can't come back later? And I know that's really awful, but it's the hassle of it. Aesthetics is another one. Some people may not take up any measures because they don't like how they look. It's like that peer pressure. Again, I don't want solar panels because people might look at them and think my house is ugly because of that. Silly, but again, it's something that we do think about. Lack of faith and lack of trust. Now, this is something, again, you may not have thought about when, offering things out, especially when you think about the eco scheme, for example. My grandma gets letters all the time about eco, but she doesn't trust them. They're not local companies. They're companies from 2 hours away. She doesn't trust them. People don't want to use installers from far away because they don't trust them, even though they might be the experts. And, my grandma, it's older people especially. If you live in a small village, everyone knows everyone. You know the milkman, you know the boiler man, you know the chippy man, you know someone from each business here. But if someone has to come in from over an hour away to put insulation, they may not be trusted, okay? Lack of knowledge, lack of understanding. Again, we saw this with Mary and Joe potentially. Many people might not know the benefits of doing these things, of being more energy efficient, of putting that insulation in, of upgrading or servicing a boiler. Many won't know the benefits. People don't know that turning things off standby will help them save money. A lot of people still think that it doesn't cost anything, and it does. They may not know about energy efficiency schemes. It's quite hard. They're not actually advertised as well as maybe they should be. And they may not know why it's important to switch tariffs or switch providers, whatever it might be. Final one on here, low prominence of energy efficiency. Now, this might come as a surprise, guys, but it's not exactly an exciting topic. It's not exactly something that people are like, yeah, do you know what? I'm going to go home, I'm going to think about how energy efficient I am, and I'm going to change my ways. We don't think about it like that. We just don't. Maybe us, the advisors working in this industry, but most people don't really do that. So, as you can see, so many reasons why things don't stick, why we tell people, go and do this. There's so many reasons telling them in their brain going, nah, let's not do that. Okay. And they might not actually be aware of it either. They might not be aware of it. They might not be able to tell you, oh, I don't want to do that because of the look of it. I don't want to do that because I'm scared of people judging me. They might not be able to tell you that. They might not even know themselves. So it's just something we have to be aware of. So what can we do to fix this? Creating a solution. We can help people take on advice in a few different ways, okay? This is not an exhaustive list. We can do different things. First one, creating agency, okay? Or developing agency. So this could be with a household. It could be an individual within that household. People often don't feel confident in doing things when it comes to their energy use. So they might feel that some things are too expensive to be taking risks, or they don't have enough knowledge and therefore confidence to carry out certain actions. Many of us learn by watching someone else, and that's what we mean by creating agency. So we can coach, we can support someone through certain actions. This is how you search for energy efficiency schemes. This is where you can find energy efficiency tips. This is how you can monitor your energy usage. By allowing them to see what you do and then do something together, even better, you're allowing them to feel more confident, empowered in the future. People need they need more than just to know how to do something. They need to feel confident that they can actually do it. So that's what creating agency is about. Demystifying is our next one. We've got to be honest, there's a lot of jargon in the energy world. We need to help make messages really, really simple. Break information down, something that's recognizable, something they're able to act on. If you've been on any of our trainings before, you'll see that we provide you with a big thick manual of all the stuff that we've talked about. If you give that energy efficiency guide to a regular householder, that lengthy manual is far too much. It's going to end up in the bin. You need to be providing small amounts of advice. Make it clear, make it inviting, and it's a lot better than that massive handbook. Competition, making things into a game, is another way to help solve this issue. Set games, set competitions around the behaviours that you're encouraging, particularly effective with families with children. So I've made a game and therefore a routine in my house. At the end of the day, I'll talk to the dog and I'll say, right, let's go room to room. We'll start off in the lounge. I turn things off in the lounge. We move through to the kitchen. He leads, he won't move on until I've finished everything I need to in that room. He'll move into the kitchen. We'll go up the stairs. We come across the landing to my office, make sure everything's okay. And then he leads me back into the bedroom. So, he doesn't really understand the game, I don't think. He doesn't know that why we're doing it or when we do it or that sort of thing. But he needs to do it before we can go to sleep. He'll get angry if we don't do that little routine. If you've got kids, you could say one child goes to one room, another child goes to another room. Who can turn things off the quickest? That sort of thing. Again, make it a game. Commitment, goal setting, and pledging, another way. Encourage people to write down what they'd like to do, set a goal, write it down, share it with others. That helps the action become real and would hopefully mean an increase in the likelihood of that behaviour change being adopted. People don't want to be seen to fail. We've all been there. I'm going to save some money. I'm going on a diet. I'm going to the gym. It works best when we've planned it out, we've told other people about it, and we've got others to help encourage us. So it really comes down to the way we frame the message. Don't just tell people, do this, okay? Think about those external factors. Don't just say, do this, help them. This is how you do this. Would you like any help in doing that? This is how we can be a bit more energy efficient. Shall we involve the kids? Shall we write it down? Shall we make a goal? Shall we make a plan? Can I make this clearer for you, more simple for you? So, making that advice stick. So something to be aware of is the EAST framework. Now, this was developed by the Behavioural Insights team over 10 years ago now, but it's a really good way of making it easier for people to take up advice, help it stick in their routine, okay? So EAST, make it easy, make it attractive, social, and then make it timely too. So making it easy, make the behaviour change something that's easy for them to start doing, easy for them to keep in their routine. Think of a fruit bowl, okay? If your office says, right, we want people to eat more fruit, they're going to put out bananas, apples and oranges, you can almost guarantee that the bananas will go first, apples will go next, oranges will be left at the end of the day. There's a bit more hassle, all right? They're not as easy as, the banana. Bananas are my favourite fruit as well, so of course they'll go first in my house too. So energy-wise, think of a heating programmer. The original routine may be to turn the heating on and off as and when they want it, which might seem easy, but there's a lot of variables there. Things can go wrong. If we set the programmer to come on making the starting task earlier, if we set it to come on at the times that they are waking up, to turn off at the times that they're going to work, to school, usually people have a set routine. That's one step taken away from that routine, making life easier. One of the other ways that we can make things easier is, again, to simplify the message. Remember what I said about big, thick manuals? They are very, very overwhelming. Cut it down, pick the key messages out, especially the messages that relate to that specific household, all right? Again, if they're rented, no point telling them about cavity wall insulation. If they're not going to be there, if the landlord isn't wanting to do anything. Provide a single point of contact too. Oh, just call your energy supplier. That's a really big ask. Could be met with, who is my supplier? What's the number? Do they have an email? Am I getting through to the right department? What do I say? Simplify that step for the best results. Make it attractive, okay? Is someone environmentally minded? Turning down the heating will help reduce your carbon usage. If you've got someone looking to save the pennies here and there, turn things off standby and it can save you this amount per week. If you've got kids, okay, if we start this energy saving behaviour, we can use the money to save towards a day trip somewhere. If you've got a householder who loves a time sensitive bargain, this is a limited time offer. Take it up now. Make the action appealing. Get the householder's attention. Again, make it personal to them. Maybe even incorporate rewards for maximum effort. Again, make it personal to that person. Make it social too. We are heavily influenced by what people around us do and say. We reduce our energy consumption when we know that others in similar households use less energy than we do, okay? We are more likely to take the stairs rather than lift when our colleagues are doing the same, all right? Social norms have been really effective in encouraging recycling, reducing litter, encouraging dog owners to carry plastic bags when they walk their dogs. Think about it the other way. When there's lots of litter on the floor, people are more encouraged to sort of litter themselves. When it's in clean environment, people are more likely to take it home. They're not going to drop anything. We should be encouraging people to, showing them that most people are doing this thing, especially people in their own social groups. They are doing this specific behaviour. Maybe you should be too. Use that goal setting idea as well. Encourage people to make a commitment to others. Yes, I'm going to make sure I've turned everything off at night before I go to bed. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to look into this scheme to be more efficient. I'm going to look into changing my tariff. You'll find they start doing it more when they talk to others. Finally, make it timely. Prompt people when they are more likely to be receptive. There is no point in saying, hey, you need to put draft proofing and insulation measures in your home when it's, if it's anything like a couple of years ago, if it's 40 degrees outside. No point. People don't want to think about insulation when it is roasting outside. Really plan for it. Help people plan for the events. You want to be encouraging people. Do this in time for winter. It's September now. It's getting colder. Have you got your cavity wall insulation? Book it in now. Do also remember that we're more likely to change our habits in periods of transition, okay? You've moved house, you're refurbishing, okay? How about trying this behaviour at the same time? Do remember also to bring in future gains into sight. People are more influenced by the benefits of right now rather than next year. If you put this insulation in, you'll be warm tomorrow rather than you'll save £40 in the next month. It's just like anything else. If you told me you can have a Chinese takeaway tonight, which is my favourite takeaway, by the way, Chinese takeaway tonight, or you can have 40 quid next month, I'm going to go for the Chinese takeaway. I want it now rather than in a month's time, whatever it might be. So East can be a really powerful tool to help clients take up energy advice. I'll give you an example of it working in reality. So an NHS board, they really needed to promote flu vaccines for their staff. They put up notices to make it attractive, obviously, in the staff room, and it got 21% of their staff. They then provided a map to that room, making it easy, which got 30% of staff. They then visited each ward, they spoke to staff, they made it clear, this is the time I'll be in the room. Plus, they made sure that it coincided with shift changes, making it social, making it timely. And by the end of it, they had 89% of their staff vaccinated. So there's no great answers here, all right? There's no great solutions, but hopefully some of these points will help. We need to be making it easier for people to make the right decisions. So if you tell people do this and they don't, maybe think about what's going on in their life. Is there attention elsewhere? Is it a cost thing? Is it a peer pressure thing? What's happening? So that brings us to the end of this session. So I hope you've enjoyed it. As I said before, this is a shorter version, a very short version of one of our courses, Changing Energy Related Behaviour. So if you would like to learn more about that, please do have a look at the website. I'll speak a little bit more about training a little bit later on. But again, thank you so much for listening. You'll be back with me after Rebecca and after the break. But for now, I'll pass you back to Rebecca and to Molly. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, Becky. That's brilliant. So that very condensed version of that training course feeds really well into what Rebecca's going to present next, which is about that kind of in-community work with clients, with community partners, and some kind of tips for making that the most effective, especially as we've got both next winter to prepare for, but we've also got a summer of delivery, and all our goals and mindsets, as Becky mentioned, change. So we have to have that shifting understanding. So brilliant. Thanks so much, Becky. If you do have any questions for Becky, again, please do use the Q&A function. We'll all be hanging around and trying to answer as many as we can. Just a reminder, if anyone has joined late, to please use the interpretation button on your Zoom bar if you would like to access BSL interpretation for this session. Rebecca, are you happy to share your slides? And just a heads up, you are on mute.
There we go. Now you can all hear me. Hello, everybody. So I'm Rebecca, and I've been working in the community sector for a really long time. So before working in fuel poverty, which, like I said, is I'll show you in a minute how long I've been working in fuel poverty. I was working in regeneration over in East Brighton. So I worked with a lot of small community groups in little tiny community venues, supporting them doing the work they were doing in the community. And I learned an awful lot from working in those tiny communities. It was really, really helpful and really fed into work that I do at NEA. And I have been doing this kind of work, as you can see, hang on, if I go into my next slide, since 2007. And this is me at my first ever energy event. Surprise slide. Everybody who's checked my slides. That's me in the middle, dressed as a cavity wall. So that was back in the day where the Energy Saving Trust would loan out costumes to energy advice organisations around the country. So that is meant to be me dressed as a wall. There was another one which was in fact a washing machine costume. I can't even begin to tell you how ridiculous that was. That was pretty daft. Nobody knew what that was. But it did get people's attention, even if it did make a few small children cry. That's not what you're going for, obviously. But it did get people's attention. And this was an event that was put on by all the local councils in West Sussex. And the local councils had this amazing energy bus that would go around to different town centres, and the local energy advisors would put out information. And as you can see there, we also had other organisations supporting us as well. So we had Southern Water there and a couple of other organisations too. I think we had Citizens Advice. And working in partnership like that worked really, really well for us, because if you're waiting to speak to one person, then there would be somebody from another organisation you could speak to. It was also eye-catching. You could sort of casually wander past, half look and think, right, I'm just going to go to the shop. I might go and check that later when they're a bit quieter. It was a really good subtle way of getting energy information out to people. Well, when I say subtle, apart from being dressed as a giant cavity wall, I couldn't really talk to anybody then either, so perhaps not the best way for me to get information to people, but it was, to be honest, always quite good fun. Sadly, I don't believe EST actually provide these costumes anymore, but if anybody knows of any lurky anywhere, I would really quite like to have a go. Anyway, enough about me and what I do. What I'm going to talk to you today about is what I have learned from being involved in all sorts of energy awareness type events over the years since 2007, and I think that was possibly my like second or third week in the job. So I thought, first of all, the one I wanted to talk to you about was marketing. You want to put on an event. Well, I've been to many types of events, many that other people have put on, and so many people seem to think that you can just put up a poster and that will do the trick. People will come because your poster's really well designed. It's really bright colours, and you've put it up in the library and you've put it up on the community notice board. You don't have to do anything else, do you? Maybe put up a post in a newsletter as well. Now, I have also been to many events where nobody turns up at all, or maybe one or two, but that's the maximum. I went to one event in a rural village hall where no members of the public turned up at all, apart from the community support officer. He did get an awful lot of information, and we did do a lot of good networking, but it wasn't best use of everybody's time, sadly. So what went wrong? Well, you've got to look at spreading your marketing types around a bit to get different types of people coming to your event. Now, in this village that I went to, it was very rural, and a lot of people were of working age and had gone to work. So there wasn't footfall past this village hall. However, there were plenty of older people who had retired and were living there. Now, what could they have done to get that information to those people? Well, in my experience, excuse me, word of mouth works the best way to get people to an event, particularly in small areas. If you're working on a small estate or in a small village, like Becky was saying, everybody knows everybody else. The word spreads around. It's different if you're, trying to cover a whole town or something like that. But when you're working at these smaller venues and these smaller events, then word of mouth is a great way to do it. If you've got community development workers or other organisations that are going out into the community, and maybe you've got like people who are looking at healthcare stuff, like light touch health, like walks for health and stuff like that, get information out through those people, get information onto different Facebook groups, get into newsletters, into free newspapers. They're a good one as well. People always pick those up. If there is a local radio station, they're always looking for people to talk, people to share information about the events. So get onto that. Use your local networks. So if you've got local newsletters, e-newsletters you can sign up to, share it amongst those organizations, so the organizations themselves know they can share your posters with the people that they support. Get onto Facebook. So there's lots of different ways that you can get that information out there. You can produce like little flyers, put them in the library. It's always a winner. People, when they're waiting to check the books out, will use your flyer as a bookmark. It's a really good way of getting it out there. Doctors' waiting rooms as well, if you're allowed to put leaflets there. Community venues as well, any kind of community venue that you've got in the local area, including the one that you're planning to have the event in as well. Make sure the people who run the centre that you're having the event in also know about it. Any groups that also use that centre, make sure they know about it as well. And word of mouth is going to work the best for this kind of thing. This is one of my favourite tips, and this is one that I learned when again, right back in the start of working in fuel poverty. One of the most popular events I've ever been to in my life was something that Mid Sussex District Council put on every year. It was meant to be for over 60s. And it was absolutely packed out every single year. It was actually quite hard work. It was so busy. And in order to attract the over 60s, they always advertised it for the over 50s. Every single time. To be honest, most of the over 50s were, that 50 to 60 bracket were probably still working. But if they had health issues, if they'd retired early, then they might come along. But mainly it was retired people who came along to this event. And it was a really, really interesting event. Loads of stuff going on. They've got this great venue where they could have activities. So there was some exercise things, there was some singing, there was some flower arranging, all sorts of, oh, there was some indoor bowls, there were chair aerobics, all sorts of things you could try. There were refreshments, there was proper sandwiches, teas and coffees, obviously, and it was nice and accessible. And there was also lots of marketplace type of stalls that everybody could come and grab free tote bags. This was back in the day when not many people had free bags, so it was pretty exciting. And people come and grab lots of freebies off the stalls. And they knew, because it was happened every single year, and it was like a winter wellness type event, that there were going to be free stuff, lots of stuff to watch and to get involved in. It was incredibly popular. And that for me is like the dream event. You've got lots of people coming in, you've got lots of different types of organisation, so there's something for everybody. Now, like I said, it was perhaps a little bit too popular. So it's hard to have the in-depth conversations that you might want to have when you're working in a fuel poverty or energy energy saving environment, because a lot of the time, like Becky was saying, actually people don't know that they've got an issue. They don't know they've even got a question to ask, and you want to make it so that they do feel comfortable to ask you those questions. So you want to make the environment right for them. So first of all, you need to decide where you're going to put your event on. And are you going to do it all by yourself, or are you going to piggyback onto another group or event? In my experience, if you've not got like a ton of funding, if you're not like a big city council or a big town, you know, whatever, it's often better to piggyback on something that's going on already. For instance, if you've got an established group that's already working on a standalone event, get information and go along to that instead. Share information there. I remember, like, one of the projects I worked on in the past, we would go along to children's centres and make sure we'd go along on a day that they'd got a couple of different groups attending, and I'd have an information stand actually out in the lobby, so people coming in and out could see me, could have a chat to me either on the way in or on the way out. And I didn't set up something brand new and exciting. There was already stuff going on at this particular centre. So that works really well. Another fun thing that I was used to really enjoy going to was lunch clubs. And lunch clubs, they're not quite as many of them as around as they used to be, but it was where you would get a group of older people would go along to a venue that'd be provided with a free lunch. They would often have a speaker. So there would be me right at the front with my microphone shouting at the group of people getting their free lunch. Or sometimes they'd pay normally. And they'd often be brought in by minibus as well. So they'd be sort of shipped in from various sheltered accommodation, things like that as well. And that did actually work really well, as long as you make sure you're doing the talking before they eat. Otherwise, they're all going to fall asleep. However exciting and full of pizzazz, like, you know, to us, energy is exciting. To a lot of other people, it's not really that thrilling. So it can cause people to fall asleep in that 2 o'clock slot. That's another top tip. Try to avoid talking at that time of day. So you're going to think about your venue. One of the things that I discovered when working in regeneration was there can sometimes be political with a small p issues around particular communities. So excuse me, ask around, make sure that there aren't any issues around a particular venue, that most people would be comfortable going to it, that there's not, you know, check out in the local press, have a look on Facebook, see if there's any interesting articles around it, just to double check. If you're going to a venue that you've not used before, look at footfall. Some places will look fantastic in the summer. I went to an event that was put on by a housing association who will remain nameless, and the event space would have been fantastic in summer. It was on a new estate. It was right next to a children's play park. It was really, really lovely, really nice venue. However, in winter there were no streetlights. There was no footfall, and there was nobody who was going to come down to this community venue because it was at the end of a road and it was a dead end. So nobody came to the event. So think about footfall, particularly if you struggled to maybe get your marketing. You might not have much budget. You might not have been able to print much in the way of posters. You might just have to stick an A board outside. That's also fine. So think about that. Will there be other odd folks who'll just wander in? Because it's really helpful if you can find someone that has that as well. Accessibility, including transport. Now, accessibility doesn't just mean putting in a ramp. Accessibility can mean all sorts of things to different people. It can mean, does the venue look welcoming? What's the doorway like? Is the doorway closed? There's nothing worse than a group that you go along to and they say, oh yeah, we welcome everybody, but the group is looking pretty homogenous. So you've got to look at how people are going to get there, what kind of facilities they've got. Are there going to be any noisy events nearby? What other buildings are nearby? Is there a pub next door? Is it next to a shop with lots of kids hanging out that perhaps older people might feel a little bit uncomfortable walking past? Look at the bits and pieces that are also going to make the building accessible to people. So are there chairs with arms? I'm mildly obsessed with chairs with arms because it's just such a lovely, discreet way of helping people who might struggle to get up. It makes such a huge difference to the comfort of people attending your event if they can get in and out of a chair without asking for help. It's absolutely lovely to do that. Check your IT. Is there any? Have they got just a wall that you need to show slides onto? Do the curtains on the windows draw so people can see your slides if you're going to be doing a talk? Yeah, it's really annoying if you try and project your slides onto a wall and nobody can see them. Check the heating. When I trained as a trainer many years ago, one of the things we were taught was you've got to make sure that the people attending your training are comfortable. Are there enough toilets? Does the heating work? Are there going to be refreshments? Is there at least water that they can drink at the very least if you can't afford bickies and teas and coffees? And make sure those kind of things are put in place so people feel comfortable attending and want to hang around as well. You don't want people, if you're doing a talk, you don't want people to have to get up and leave in the middle of it because they're too cold. I have actually had that happen. So do make sure that all those kind of things are in place before you even starting off what you're going to do. Just get my cursor in the right place so I can find my slide. There we go. So you've found your ideal venue, you know what you're going to do. Well, when are you going to do it? You've even got to think about things like that. So what day of the week and what time? Because that's all going to affect who can attend. If you want stay-at-home parents as well as people who are retired to attend, you're going to have to go for the 10 till 2 slot. Any later than 2, then you might have parents who've got children at schools further away already having to go off in order to, or they might have kids at 2 different schools, so they're going to have to do quite a long pickup run. So think about the timings. And if you're going to have that slot, are you going to provide some lunch as well? Because that will help people attend. You might need to avoid Fridays because of people attending Friday prayers. Evenings can mean that people working will attend. However, they often don't, unless you've made it really attractive with, you know, proper hot food, something that's local to them, not too late in the evening, and with loads of freebies. And you've got to market it really well. It's pretty hard work to get people to come along in the evening to something standalone. So if there's something already going on at the event space, then that's brilliant. You might actually get people coming along. You might actually want to go to a venue that has already got Friday prayers. So you might have people coming out of Friday prayers and coming into your event. So that's a really good way of looking at that as well. Don't forget to check local school holiday dates. You might be on the border of an area where school holiday dates change as well. So you might know them for your area, but in fact, just next door, it could be slightly different. knowing holiday dates can make a huge difference to what kind of people attend your event as well. So you might want to look to see what holiday support is available for low-income households. That's a really good thing to piggyback on. When I was working in Brighton, there was an organisation called Chomp, who, what a great name, who used to every school holiday would put on some support for low-income families, for families whose children would access free school meals. They would provide the children and the parents with food at lunchtime, and there'd be some very simple activities for children, nothing fancy, maybe toys, maybe a film, something like that, pretty uncomplicated stuff. So they were always quite happy to have people coming along and chatting. So I didn't do a talk to the group. I would basically maybe take a couple of leaflets with me, but I would just go and sit and chat to each group of parents. And that worked much, much better because their span of attention was quite short because they were also half keeping an eye on their children. And again, you need to think about when you're going to do that to make sure it slots in with those timings. And again, like I said, sunset, your venue might be right next to a park with plenty of footfall in summer, but look at shorter days. Is that going to be the case in the middle of winter? So again, think about your timings, really, really important. And like I said, if you're going to do a talk to a group, you're either going to have to make it really wow or very interactive, particularly if you're talking to older people, or to be honest, anybody, because if you've had a big lunch and you're sitting in a chair and you're in a warm room and someone's droning on about something you're not particularly interested in, you might well snooze off. It happens to the best of us, even if the subject is actually very interesting. You've got somebody as exciting as me delivering the presentation. It's really easy for it to happen. So I would say, if you do find yourself looking into your crowd and there are a couple of people who are nodding off, don't take it personally. The one thing that I always do at the beginning of a talk, see, I can't see any of you, so you could all be looking on your phones. But when I'm doing a talk to a group, particularly if it's professionals, I will look at them and say, phones away. I don't want anybody checking their phones while I'm talking because it's incredibly distracting. It's so annoying. I really can't bear it. If you've got some kind of emergency coming up, that's fine. Keep your phone out on the table, no problem. I don't want you checking your emails while I'm talking. It's super rude. So I will always say that at the beginning, and it usually makes sure that everybody behaves themselves. But yeah, it's important to get that kind of housekeeping in at the beginning as well. So how are we going to put it on? So I love a good marketplace event. I find them fun to attend. They're a great way of getting information out to lots of different people. You can go to parts of your town or your city or your area that you've not been to before. And it's also a really good networking opportunity. So it can be a really, really good way of you finding out about other groups who might want talks as well. That's often what I use them for. However, even free food and freebies isn't going to guarantee folks attending. I went to an event in Kent not that long ago, in the middle of an estate in a good community venue. I didn't set it up. I didn't do the marketing myself, got to say. I just went along and attended. And I was giving out these amazing free bags of energy saving stuff, really good stuff. And it'd been advertised. There was free food, loads of amazing stuff going on. However, I think 4 or 5 people came in 3 hours. It was quite boring. And also, I've got to say, it was freezing cold because they had the doors open all the time. If you're going to put on a marketplace event, you've got to support the organisations and make sure they're comfortable too, because none of us stayed till the end because we were all freezing and quite bored. We'd all talked to each other already, and that was enough for everybody. So make sure that it's comfortable for the people attending as well as coming in through the doors. Now, I also like a good talk to a group. As you can tell, I quite like it. I quite like chatting. It can be, though, a bit daunting. So you don't have to do that. There are lots of different ways of getting information to people. like I said, you can try a marketplace event, but if it's a small group, why not just sit and have a couple with them? One of the groups that I always really enjoy talking to are carers groups. There are thousands of carer support groups all over the country. They always meet in quite a casual way. In a small venue, I've been to some that meet in the large area at the back of a pub, not for a pint, still for a cuppa. But it's usually pretty casual. So I sit and have a chat to them. I talk to them about energy, like what supplier are you with? How are your bills? Do you know what you're doing? And it's particularly important for carers, actually, because a lot of them find themselves in a position of being a carer quite suddenly, and they might have to suddenly take over the bills when there's loads of other things like managing medical appointments for their partner has happened really quickly. So they're a really good group to work with. They're often not really large groups as well, so it's a great way of kind of cutting your teeth on talking to a smaller group who are really interested in what you have to say. They're all going to need to know about the Priority Services Register. So at the very least, you can sit there and explain to them what that is. You can even bring your laptop along and sign a few of them up if you want to. Great way of interacting with people without having to go into too much detail and without getting asked lots of questions that you might be a bit nervous about being asked. So that's really, and you can also ask them to send you questions in advance if you want as well. That works quite well. Now, of course, you can do the dreaded PowerPoint. Try and make your presentations interactive. Obviously, when I can't see any of you, I don't know whether you're interacting with me or not, whether you're laughing, whether you're smiling, whether you think I'm quite boring. To be honest, I've done enough of these to know that I know that my voice isn't boring. So one of the things you can do is to practice your talks. Time it, please time it to see how long it is. And perhaps do it for one of your colleagues. Get them to sit through it and give you some really proactive feedback as well, because you may be talking way too fast, you may be talking way too slow. I have a tendency to talk too fast because I get really overexcited about fuel poverty. So I have to remember occasionally to slow myself. And in my head, slowly feels like it's the slowest talking you've ever done. But in fact, it's just pretty normal. Oh, apparently my internet connection is unstable, so hopefully you won't lose me. Make sure that you've got some good questions to interact with people about. So don't just talk at them like I'm having to do today. Ask the group questions. What do you have? Who's heard of the Priority Service Register? Has anybody used their in-home display on their smart meters? That kind of thing. If you've got the space or the time, what about a little activity? Matching the picture of the meter to the name. I know it sounds weird, but in this country, we've got so many different types of old style meters. That's actually quite a useful thing to do. And obviously use fewer words than I've done on this slide. Today's top tip. Check that the group or the venue that you're going to be working with has everything that you need. Don't assume that they've got power cables or a projector. We've all been caught out on that one. And there's nothing worse than having to do your presentation, just showing them your tiny laptop. It's quite hard work. Check the parking and your journey on Google Maps. So make sure you're really prepared because you're going to be nervous. Now, I come across as being somebody who's quite confident, who's good at this kind of thing. I am just as nervous as anybody else. Honestly, trust me. Inside, I'm always shaking. So I always do my research. I check where I'm going to park. I check my train times 3 times. I go onto Google Maps. I have a look to see what the venue looks like from the outside, all that stuff well in advance.
Rebecca,
Yes.
just to say we're at time, so just your favorite points on these slides, and then we'll obviously get them out to everyone as well and they can come back with any questions.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, just quickly about communication with your chosen group. So make sure that your presentation works for the groups. Make sure that you are not presuming that everybody cooks meat and 2 veg. adapt your slides to your group. Try simple quizzes or bingo to get people interested, and don't do that when you're talking to people. Face your audience so they can understand you more easily. Marketplace events, shut your laptop. Shut your laptop. Shut your laptop. Don't look at your phone. That is the most important thing I can tell you, because you're completely unapproachable if you're doing this. I always stand up and say hello to people as they walk past, whatever mood I'm in, even if I don't really feel like engaging with people. I'm a bit tired, or the journey's been long, or I missed train connections or whatever. If you stand up and say hello to people as they walk past, they might pop back and talk to you later. Don't show any fear with your sign-in sheet. Just go, oh, if you wouldn't mind just popping your name and address there, that would be great. Bowl of fruit on the table, just as enticing as a bowl of sweets. In fact, possibly more so. And stop checking your phone and shut your laptop. And do spend time networking with other organisations, because they often know other groups that you can talk to. So amazingly, I talked for that long with just 7 or 8 slides. I'm always really impressed when I do that. Thank you very, very much for listening. If you need NEA to come and talk to any groups, or you would like us to support any events that you're at, do check out our website and you can request NEA as a speaker. And do feel free to email me if any questions you've got about today, if you think about it about half an hour later. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Sorry for cutting you off. There was loads. I would really suggest go and have a read of the Q&A, because there was loads of really good suggestions that people had from their own experiences, or, you know, their own mistakes that they'd made, that they'd learned from in the past. So might have to compile those all together and send them out. We are going to take a break now, so we'll come back at 1:45, if that's all right with everyone. Just have a bit of a comfort break, go make yourself a cup of tea, stretch your legs. And then when we come back, Becky will be doing a kind of bridged version of our renewable technologies level 2, very, very abridged, to be clear. So that's a bit more content heavy, a little bit more information to take away and give to clients. So hopefully see you all back here in about 10 minutes. Okay, I thought I might be a minute or so early, but actually we're just bang on time now. So it's 1:15. People might still be just having their breaks. We'll just be coming back slowly now. Thanks for staying with us. So what I'll do is pass over to Becky, who's going to talk about renewable technologies, basically. Just to give you a bit of a heads up, we'll still be manning the Q&A. Renewable technologies, I'm not an expert in them, so anything we don't know today, I'll take away those questions, we get them answered and followed up for you. So Becky, I'll pass over to you.
Thank you very much. All right. There we are. Hopefully that's all right.
Yep, I can see that.
Well, thank you. Just moving all my screens in the right place. Okay, well, hello again, everyone. Yeah, thank you so much for staying on. Hope you're enjoying the day so far. So yeah, this is obviously Domestic Renewable Technology Spotlight. Now this is, many of you will probably be aware that NEA has a training team, and obviously, which I'm part of. We deliver a range of courses, of e-learnings, webinars, qualifications to help people like you guys support the people you're working with, essentially, those in fuel poverty, those in fuel debt, those living in energy inefficient housing, as well as a whole host of other things. So this session is going to be looking at our course, Introduction to Domestic Renewable Technologies. And as Molly said, I think this is the case for a lot of people. We obviously hear a lot about renewable technologies and, oh, we need to be renewable and we need to start doing this. But a lot of people don't understand what's out there, how it works, what's going on. So as I said, this is an introduction course. This is one of our level 2 courses. So I'm going to talk about a little about what the course involves, basically giving you a little taster of each of the sessions, things you can expect from this course if you do choose to book on. Hopefully give you some information as well you can use in your daily work life too. So let's get started. What exactly is the course? So it is a rather long title, I'll be honest. We normally call it Intro to Domestic. That's probably how I'll refer to it as we go through. But it is an introduction to domestic renewable low carbon technologies. And it's an NCFE level 2 qualification. So it's accredited, it's a proper course and everything. It's aimed at anyone wanting to know the basics of renewable technologies in the home. As I said before, these renewables, they are going to be everywhere. Okay, they won't be long, they are going to be everywhere. So it's good to sort of get a grasp on what technologies there are, how they work, what's going on. Now, this particular course, it's available as a webinar, so it's either 2 full mornings or 2 full afternoons, or if you'd like to do it in person, it is available as a full day course. So you just let us know if you've got, 6, 7, 10, 15 people wanting to do this course, let us know. Wherever you're based, we'll come to you and we'll deliver this training. There is good news too. Whenever I say, oh, there's a really, really great idea, a lot of people ask, well, how much is that going to cost me? And in all areas of my life, there are fully funded webinar places available. So I will talk about this a little bit later, okay? Something it's only just occurred to me to talk about really during the break there. If you're thinking, I am aware of some of these things, I think I'm all right on the introduction part. If you are thinking, I'd really like to know the nitty-gritty about heat pumps or the nitty-gritty about solar PV, we do also have a level 4 qualification, okay? So a level 4 qualification in renewable technologies and all that sort of thing. There's lots more to be had in that. And I'll talk about that a little bit at the end as well. So if you are thinking as we go through, maybe this is a little bit too much on the basic side, on the introduction side for me, we do have more. There's always more available. So the level 2 course, so what does this cover? We basically look at decarbonisation. So what is it? How important is it? The leading drivers of decarbonisation in the UK. We look at renewable heat technologies. So obviously the ones who they actually create heat in our homes. We look at renewable electricity. So the technology and the appliances that make electricity in the home. We look at the factors to consider before installing measures. So what do we need to think about? Space, suitability, costs as well. Costs is a really, really big one. We finish off each technology by going through the advantages and the drawbacks of each of them. Okay. Now, just before we start, my dog's just found his bone. I'm just going to confiscate that. Oh, there we are. Got the bone. Put that away, otherwise I'll be just thinking, I don't know if you can hear the bone, but I can certainly hear it. So now he's looking at me like I'm the worst mother. Oh, I feel bad. And I'm over it. What is decarbonisation? So let's have a look at this first. So this is obviously one of the primary things that we look at. What's the point? What's the point of these renewable technologies? Now, decarbonisation is the process of reducing greenhouse gases, particularly carbon dioxide. Now, the main issue with these greenhouse gases, they're essentially ruining the Earth's atmosphere, okay? They're leading to global warming. We've sort of got a bubble, essentially, around the Earth that protects us from the sun, essentially. And these greenhouse gases are burning holes in that sort of bubble. And it means more sun is, the rays are able to get into the Earth's bubble more. And it's heating the Earth up, which obviously, as we know, really bad. We don't want this. So from a climate emergency standpoint, we need to be thinking, it's insane. Man-made emissions of carbon dioxide, they've risen sharply since the Industrial Revolution. So the Industrial Revolution, what, 150, 170 years ago. Since then, carbon dioxide off the scale. Between 1970 and 2011, they more than doubled, which again is insane. We really need to be changing the way we live to improve the planet, to allow us to continue living on this planet. Otherwise, we're heading towards a WALL-E situation where we're all going to live in spaceships. We don't want that. So how do we fix this? Okay, what do we do? Essentially, all countries, it's not just us, all countries around the world, we need to reduce our carbon emissions from a variety of sectors. And we'll have a look at the sectors in just a minute. But, you know, thinking about electricity generation, heat, transport as well. Now, there's a few different reasons why obviously it's necessary to do all of this. As I said, to tackle the climate emergency, to reduce climate change, we want to sort of patch up that bubble as best we can, if we can do that. We want to patch that up. We want to reduce that change to our climate, to the earth. But also to meet government legislation. Obviously, the government has realised this is a big problem. So there's been a number of legislative measures put in place to aid in decarbonisation. Now, let's have a look at those sectors that we talked about. So just to give you an idea of where our greenhouse gases go to. Obviously, remember, greenhouse gases, they're the bad ones. We don't want these, but we produce a heck of a lot of them. So transport, 27%, sorry. So that's road transport, railways, aviation, domestic shipping, all those sorts of things. Mainly, it's like petrol and diesel in this section. Energy supply, that creates about 21%. You've got, and that's from power stations, that sort of thing. You've got businesses, 17%, agriculture, 10%, but it's residential we're going to focus on. About 15% of the UK's greenhouse gas emissions come from our homes, okay? Nearly all of that is from natural gas for heating, as well as cooking. It's also things like aerosols, inhalers, similar things to that too. So as you can see, there are some other big hitters, but we want to be reducing those emissions everywhere we can. And this is something in our sector we can help with the residential side. So how do we decarbonise energy in our homes? How do we do that? So how do we reduce the greenhouse gas emissions? A few different ways. We want to be making sure that our houses are thermally efficient. Okay, so when we say fabric and thermal efficiency, a fabric first approach. So fabric first essentially means that we are making our homes, they're insulated, okay? They're keeping that heat in. Remember, obviously, the more heat our homes can keep in, the less we have to put in them. You know, the less heat we have to use, less energy, less we have to spend as well. And that will help reduce it. So fabric first, we're upgrading our buildings, insulation, newer systems, making the most of the heat that we're putting in. We want to be using low carbon heat and low carbon electricity, as well as the heat distribution systems, using technology that produces less carbon. This is what this course is about, as we'll see. We want to be thinking about the products and the appliances we are using. Okay, we want to be making sure we're using the ones that use the least carbon or produce the least carbon. Energy saving products, so making sure we are using energy efficient products. We're thinking about energy storage, and we're using controls, we're using technology to monitor, okay, and reduce our usage. Again, we've got to think about this from a cost point of view. Turning the heating on when we don't need it is costing us. We're having to pay for that, but it's also contributing to a larger problem. So we want to be using those controls to monitor, reduce our usage. But we as advisors, very important for us, we need to help people understand the systems too. They need to understand how the systems work, how best to use them, how to get the most out of them. So, what technologies are out there? These are some of the technologies that we focus on in the Intro to Renewables course. First one is biomass. Then we've got heat pumps, solar thermal hot water, and solar photovoltaics. I can't say it all in one word. We call it solar PV, all right? So these are the technologies that we focus on. These are also feature in that level 4 qualification that I told you about too, all right? But a little bit more in detail as a level 4. So we're going to start off with biomass. What exactly is biomass? Now, essentially, biomass, they think of it as carbon neutral, all right? So biomass is plant or animal material that can be used for energy production. So now, as I said, they class it as carbon neutral. The idea is that the CO2, the carbon dioxide released by burning this biomass, is the same as what the plant produced in its life. Okay, so obviously you have a tree, it produces carbon dioxide, and no, it doesn't produce it. It takes in carbon dioxide, and then when you burn it, it releases that. But we plant more trees, they take in more carbon dioxide, and the circle continues. It is, I'll admit, a very simplistic approach. It is much more complicated than that. But essentially, it takes in, releases, takes in, releases. We do also need to consider, the transportation of moving these trees and these logs and that sort of thing, and the carbon involved in making the appliance itself, whatever appliance it is. Plus, when we're burning biomass, it will take many years, even decades sometimes, to replace the trees burnt to obviously make more. So it is a little bit of a complicated one, but it is classed as carbon neutral. Now, using biomass. So biomass is commonly wood pellets or logs, okay? So pellets are commonly made from sawdust. They're a byproduct of the sawdust industry. But they can also be made specially grown from crops like willow, coppice, or even straw, all right? They're quite high in energy despite their very, very small size. Plus, they require less storage space than things like logs. Also, they're easier to ignite. Logs, on the other hand, whilst they're a heck of a lot cheaper and way easier to access than pellets are, they are about half as energy efficient as the pellets, despite their size. So that's something to sort of keep in mind when you are using biomass, which is going to be best for you, okay? Pellets more expensive, logs cheaper, pellets easier to use, logs a little less. Now, biomass can be used in wood stoves, pellet stoves, one of the most traditional methods of domestic heating. They're generally used to heat a single room. Some might actually be fitted with a back boiler to provide, hot water too, water heating as well. But generally, they do tend to be for one room only. Householders might also have a pellet burning stove, okay? So that's the diagram you can see on the right there. Pellets are essentially moved into the boiler to create heat within a home or within a room, okay? Now, there are a few things to consider when it comes to burning biomass. There are a lot of rules in regards to what householders cannot burn, the quality of the fuel, the type of fuel, whether they're actually able to burn things in their area. In some areas, there is, so the Clean Air Acts, people aren't allowed to burn certain things in certain areas. In England, you can't use coal anymore, for example. It's the same sort of thing. You also want to be thinking about the space that that appliance is in. Some of these boilers can be on the larger side. They are very big. So you want to take that into account, as well as whether the householder has got the right size flue, for example, to get rid of any exhaust gases. So obviously when you burn it, you've got gases coming out, you need a way to get rid of it. In a traditional fireplace, you have the chimney, okay? In one of these stoves, you would have a flue. In regards to installation, these appliances should be fitted by professionals, as well as maintained regularly to ensure they're burning as efficiently as possible, okay? Practicality is the last thing to consider. There are a few more things, but practicality is an important thing to consider. Is there an existing chimney to put that flue in? Is the initial cost of it worth it? Is there enough space for the storage of that fuel and potentially, you know, a large boiler? Is the householder physically able to keep up with the demands of moving logs or clearing out the ash of the boilers? Okay. There's lots of things to consider before getting one of these. They look very pretty. I will admit they look very pretty. I'm on Instagram on the home improvement channels, and lots of influencers are getting stoves like this. But there's a lot of things to think about before going ahead and getting one. So that's your biomass, all right? Now thinking about heat pumps, okay? So heat pumps, they can be ground sourced, water sourced, or air sourced. Ground and air tend to be the more popular ones, I guess. Essentially, how they work, they take heat from their environment. So whether they're in the ground, whether they're just like a box and, you know, taking in air, they take the heat from the environment. That heat is transferred into a refrigerant. So it's like a liquid, essentially. And then that is boiled. Once that liquid is boiled, it turns into a vapor or a gas, and then it gets put under pressure. Okay, this is what we can see on the diagram, the compressor. It gets, I've forgotten the word now. Compressed, of course it is. So it goes through that compressor, it gets compressed, okay? Under that pressure, that vapor heats up. That then heats up water in the domestic system, which is delivered to your radiators, your underfloor heating, your hot water taps. Once all the heat from that refrigerant has moved over, okay, it's been transferred, it goes back through the system, back outside to the ground source heat pump or the air source heat pump, and it goes through that process again, okay? Now, I'm pretty sure I've probably lost a good number of you. Heat pumps, they're a scientific mystery to most people. I will admit, took me a bit of time to get my head around it. But most of us have some sort of heat pump at home. So our fridges, okay, if you think about a fridge, they do the same thing in reverse, okay? So it's really cold on the inside, but you know, if you ever put your hand behind a fridge, it's usually quite warm, isn't it? Essentially, they transfer heat from the outside, so warmth from the outside, using a pump mechanism. It switches that warm from outside and it maintains the cold temperature inside. So we have a heat pump in our home. Heat pumps obviously do the opposite of the fridge. They absorb the lower temperatures from outside and they convert to warmer, okay? So hopefully you're still with me here. Might be good to visualize this because this diagram, I'll admit, is a little bit complicated. But heat pumps, there's a few different ways. As I said, we'll focus on the ground and the air source. So we've got a horizontal ground source heat pump here. This is where a home might have a little bit more land to be able to lay the pipes, essentially. They're usually about 1 to 2 meters deep, which is the depth at which the sun's heat is stored in the ground. So the sun sort of rays down on us, and we've got, and it stores the heat in the Earth's surface. So 1 to 2 meters deep. Sizing is really important here. You can see how the pipe coils round, but it's quite long, isn't it? Size is really important. More pipe in the ground collector loop basically means the more output the system has. So more pipe means more heat. It does come at a cost though. The ground loop typically forms about 30 to 50% of the total cost of the system. So the more pipe you have, the more expensive it will be. This kind of trenching in the ground is very disruptive as well. It does require a lot of space, which is another thing to consider. Alternatively, you've got a vertical ground source heat pump. So this kind is used when space is limited or the ground is rocky. So the holes tend to be about 65 to 100 meters deep. And because of, how far they're going down, you do usually need a geological survey done on the land to make sure your house isn't going to fall down, essentially. We don't want anything moving here. And that is literally just a pipe straight down into the ground. Then you've got your air source heat pumps, okay? So these are becoming very, very popular in new build homes, all right? So many worry about the noise of these systems, but most are designed to limit those noise, the vibrations as well. But they still do suggest that heat pumps should not be mounted next to sensitive rooms, like your bedroom. Don't put it next to a bedroom. Efficiency is another thing that householders do think about with an air source heat pump. The efficiency depends on the temperature of the heat extracted from the environment. So obviously it will differ depending on the external air temperature, all right? For the ground source types, these tend to be very stable. The ground holds a certain amount of heat. Even in winter, it holds that heat. Air source is a little less efficient, simply because the air temperature does vary, okay? So, a few things to consider. Obviously, the advantages of it, very good for tackling heat in off-gas areas because, there might be more land. It's a good renewable option. It is ideal for small, well-insulated properties. Again, there is no point getting a heat pump unless you have got a very efficient home. It is well insulated. That's why we're seeing so many of them in new build homes. It reduces CO2 emissions, carbon dioxide, so there's less. We're not burning gas to get this heat. It's in the ground, it's in the air, we're using that. And there is a long life expectancy, so a lot longer than a conventional boiler at 10 to 15 years old, and obviously lower energy bills. So those are the advantages. Disadvantages here. Can be expensive to install, okay? And it does end up with a long payback period, okay? It's always been relatively expensive, and because of that, they've not really become mainstream in the market because of how expensive they are, compared to boilers. If you need new heat, you say, oh, go get a boiler, rather than usually thinking about a heat pump. Maybe a need for installation of insulation. So you might need to put new insulation in. Obviously, as I said, there's no point putting an air source heat pump if your house is, a solid wall, no insulation, gaps everywhere. Might also need installation of heat storage, heat emitters as well. So lots of things to think about. Undersizing versus oversizing, you've got to be very careful. Are we going to be creating enough heat? Think about that ground loop. If there's not enough pipe, it's not going to create enough heat. And that leads us on to the last point. It might not meet the heating or hot water demand, okay? And that might be an issue. Might not meet that. So the householder might have to look for other things, other ways to heat their home, okay? Which obviously we don't want. Solar thermal hot water. is our next one. All right, so I'm showing you really complicated diagrams here today. But the most common type of solar thermal hot water uses a twin coil cylinder, okay? What that essentially means, you have got one section, okay, taking in the sun's heat and heating up water, moving that through the boiler, so you, not the boiler, the tank, sorry. So you've got a cylinder that has your domestic water in it. Then you've got a section of water being heated up by the sun. And then you've got a second section being heated up by a separate boiler, okay? And you usually have to do this for a couple of reasons, okay? So as the amount of solar energy, it varies during the year. A solar water heating system is not going to be able to provide hot water throughout the year, okay? Because of that, that's why we need that boiler, okay? That boiler setup. So the solar system and the regular heating system from the boiler, they do not come into contact with one another. They just share the system, the cylinder, okay? They don't come into contact with each other. So cold water essentially goes through the solar collector, and once that fluid is hot enough, so it's got a temperature sensor, once it gets hot enough, it'll move around through to that cylinder and heat up the water around it. Once it cools down, obviously, because it's transferred its heat, it will go back up to the solar collector. Now, if the temperature sensor detects that the solar panel, it is not collected enough heat from the sun, it sends a signal to the boiler to say, hey, we haven't got enough hot water, you need to do something. You need to create some hot water, so there's hot water in the cylinder, okay? So, can be a little bit of a complicated thing, but once you sort of see it in action, hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. Now, when we think about the solar collector, we need to be thinking about the size. What size do we get? Now, you might notice those two pictures there, I've got two different kinds of collector. So you've got a flat pipe, and then you've got an excavated pipe, which is essentially a bubble pipe, okay, instead of a flat one. Now, the excavated one, they do tend to be a little bit more efficient because they've got more surface area, but more efficient, more expensive. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, as a rule of thumb, you have 1 meter cube of flat plate required per person, okay? Ideal conditions deliver approximately 45 litres of hot water per day, okay? Just information for you, average consumption of hot water per person per day is about 30 to 50 litres. Okay, so it could mean that someone living in a house with 4 people needs a 200-litre cylinder to have the sufficient space to be able to take in that hot water. Okay, now a little bit of question for you. I can't get involved too much, but if 3/4 of cubic meters of excavated tube is required per person, what size collector would be required in each of the following cases? Now, I'm going to give you 5 seconds just to think about this. You can't send me the answers, but I'll give you a couple of seconds just to think about that. If you said a house with 2 people, okay, house with 2 people would need 1.5 cubic meters of excavated tube collector, you would be correct. House with 3 people would need 2.25, okay, of those tube collectors, okay? So size is very, very important here, all right? Very, very important, something to be considering. You need enough space on your roof. You need to have the roof in the correct direction. Lots of things to think about. Our final technology we're going to talk about is solar photovoltaics, solar PV. Now, essentially, this is where you get a flat plate, you put it on the roof, the sun beams down on it, and we get electricity. So how exactly does that work? Magic. I can't actually explain it to you. I don't understand it. I just think science is so amazing that we've been able to just look at the sun and go, I'll get something from that. In reality, though, in reality, there's a few different ways it works. So you have a PV cell, okay? Looks a little like this. Oh, where's my picture gone? Oh, my animations have gone all out of sync. Just wait. Not sure if we've got the interpreter. There we are. So you've got a PV cell, and it'll have a couple of layers, and it converts solar energy into electricity. Now, the good thing about it, and the thing I don't personally understand, it requires daylight. It's not just direct sunlight on it, okay? Individual cells only provide a small amount of electricity, okay? So you can see the cell on there. So they're generally grouped together, usually 36, 72. The more you've got, the more output. They're connected to each other to generate the required output of electricity, okay? So there's a lot of things riding on this. Obviously, we need daylight. So if you're in a very dark area, if it's the winter, for example, you might not get as much as you want to be getting. So how can we get the most out of the system? So EST suggests doing the following. Use more electricity during the day, obviously when you've got more daylight in order to produce a bit more. Combine it with other renewable technologies. So we're thinking heat pumps, solar thermal maybe. Ensure the householder can monitor the system. Make sure they've got the controls. They can monitor how much they're creating, how much they're currently using. And then finally, reduce electricity consumption. It's just about being aware. What have I got on? Do I need to have that on? Am I upstairs and the TV is on downstairs? Can I turn that off at the wall just to save the electricity that's being created? I think overall, it's very important that we, as a human race, we look at our behaviour. We don't need things on. I think we're all guilty of leaving things on when we don't need it. In terms of reducing that electricity consumption, installing low energy lighting, okay, LED bulbs, using energy efficient appliances. So using, when you buy a washing machine or a fridge and it has that scale A to G, yeah, getting the appliances A, appliances B, A and B, that's where we want to be, okay? But using the efficient appliances, using the efficient systems on it, using eco mode on our washing machines. Switching off standby, just simply again, if the TV's on downstairs, you're upstairs, you don't need it on, turn it off at the wall. I worked out that if I leave my entire sort of work desk on overnight, it costs me 13p. Got quite a few things on here. I've got my laptop, my monitor, my printer, my speaker, my phone charger. If I leave this on overnight, it's about 13p. And obviously that is using electricity, which is why I'm being charged. So turning it off at night when we don't use it. Generally changing our behaviour too. All right, very important to be doing. So let's have a look at the advantages, disadvantages of solar PV. Obviously, long lifetime, which is a really, really great thing. It is going to last quite a while. If we do install it, it's going to last quite a while. We don't have to worry about it. It reduces our need for imported electricity. We don't need to be relying on the grid as much. Solar electricity is obviously very low in carbon when we're not, contributing to the carbon issue as much if we're using solar PV. And in some cases, we can actually generate income from it. There are schemes to make money back off the system. So it's well worth looking into. The drawbacks, however, there are some high insulation costs. Now, this is a bit controversial because some systems don't actually, the energy they provide, it doesn't make up for the price of the manufacture and the installation of the system. Okay, so it can be very costly. Obviously, if you can get it for free, wonderful, but it can be very costly. The output is also variable. Okay, it doesn't make households independent of the grid because it's not a consistent amount of electricity being provided. Shading, something you have to think about. You're not going to get too much daylight if you're covered by trees or, you know, other houses looking over you. And you might need to adapt your lifestyle. So you might need to amend your usage, like using more electricity during the day. You might need to turn things off a little bit more, that sort of thing. So that brings us to the end of our taster session today. So I hope you found it interesting. That is a very, as I said, there's basically 4 sessions to it, 2 mornings, 2 afternoons. I hope you found it interesting, if not a little bit, oh my God. There's so much more to learn on the full course, okay? So much more to learn. Do have a look at our website for a bit more information on it. We are putting on more dates available to you guys, to everyone. So how do you book on? If you're thinking, yeah, I want to learn some more about that, please do. So again, as I said, it is on our website. There's a number of open access dates available in addition to the 1-day face-to-face courses. So the open access dates, you just go onto our training website, you look for the calendar, click the button and put your name in, you're on. Hey. The face-to-face courses, there is an option there. They are booked on request. So you just send us an email, you send us a message on our training page. It's the same place as the open access bits. If you just send us a message saying, hey, we're a group of 10 people in, I don't know why, but I thought of Colchester. You know, I've never been there. So if you're a group in Colchester, please let me know and I'll come down to Colchester for the very first time. So yeah, you can book it on the website. And as I said before, there are fully funded webinar places available. Now, this is for non-commercial organisations based in England and Wales. So if you're in Northern Ireland or Scotland, unfortunately, we can't offer you that. But do still get in touch with us. Learners will need to be frontline staff or volunteers that encounter people in or at risk of fuel poverty. Okay, so please do take a look at our training if that does apply to you, because you can come on our courses for free. And it's not just the level 2 renewables course. There's lots more to be seen. So we have got a number of webinars. We've got a number of face-to-face offerings. Living with the energy crisis, focusing on what's going on right now. Fuel poverty and health, how it affects us mentally, how it affects us physically, how we as advisors can support. Our level 2 award qualification in fuel debt advice in the community, a 3 mornings, 3 afternoons, or a 1-day course available, talking you through fuel debt, how we can support people. Obviously, our level 2 award in domestic renewables, changing energy related behaviour, the one we talked about earlier, vulnerability, tackling the cold, how do we pay for fuel? Lots of things on there. If you're thinking, I'd love to do a webinar, I just don't have time, don't worry about it. We've got e-learning too, and you can do this at 2 p.m. in the office, you can do it at 2 a.m. in your bed, whatever you want to do. So we have got delivering high quality domestic energy advice. How can we do that? We've got domestic energy efficiency, smart meters, but we also have our other qualifications. So our level 3 award in energy awareness, by far our most popular course. I think we're up to 28,000 learners now. So that's available as an e-learning, also face-to-face. 3 days, we come down to you. You just let me know and I'll be down there. And then we've got our level 4 award in decarbonising homes, technologies, impacts and solution. It's a big course, but an absolutely brilliant one. So if you're thinking this introduction was a little bit too much of an introduction, that level 4 is going to be perfect for you, okay? Fully funded places may be available. As I said, have a look on our website. If you click onto each, it'll tell you what's available. Bespoke courses, also welcome. If you're sat there thinking, do you know what? I really want my staff to know about this particular thing, please let me know. Do please let me know. Email me, we can have a chat, we can see what you need, we can see if we can get something bespoke going. That could be an e-learning, could be a webinar, we could come down and visit you. I'm still thinking about Colchester. I don't know why. But do have a look at our website. My email's on there. Do feel free to contact me if you have any questions, if you want to ask about something, bespoke courses, anything like that. Just before I leave, I just want to let you know about our Fuel Poverty forums, which I'm sure Molly will mention as well. I just wanted to show you the dates too. So our Fuel Poverty forums, these are aimed at frontline service providers. Basically in your own areas to help you talk through what is going on, to showcase energy efficiency solutions at a local level, that sort of thing. So there's lots of them coming up. Do have a look at the ones in your area. I will be at the Welsh one, so if you're Welsh, please do come along, say hi. Attendance is free. We do sort of say it's a maximum of 2 places per organisation just because of numbers, but you know, please do come along. Have a look at our website for more on that. So I have got 2 minutes left. I am buzzing. I've been able to finish like a minute or two just before I'm supposed to. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for attending. Again, new faces and older faces as well. Please do have a look at our website, and my email's on here. It'll be sent round. It's also been answered in the Q&A. Any questions, please do let me know. Okay. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I'll pass you back to Molly now. Toodaloo.
Thanks very much, Becky. There's some questions. I mean, me and Ilse will be doing our absolute best. We will take away any questions that we have that we didn't know the answer to, but if you can answer any of them, Becky, then please feel free to. But also lots of invitations to go to Colchester, some recommendations for when you're there. People wondered if your dog would make it. I had to let them know that the dog did not, in fact, sponsor this bootcamp, despite his name dropping. But thank you, that's brilliant. And yeah, as Becky says, there's a whole wealth of information within our training courses, and you know, you could start out with energy advice and take beginning classes if you want to just slightly improve your knowledge, all the way up to some of our more intensive courses that give you that kind of deep dive. Please do have a look, and even if you don't sign up today, please fill out the evaluation form to let us know what you'd like to see more of, because we want to keep giving you more kind of tasters to help you understand what sort of support's available and get also excellent speakers in. I'm going to stop rattling on. Now, Jenny, you've been away for some of the session, but are you able to A, unmute yourself, and B speak at the moment?
Morning. Yeah, nice to join. Very different content, I think. I just joined at the end of Becky's talk there, and I thought, oh, this is totally different to what I'm speaking about. But yeah, hopefully in a good way.
No, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, that was definitely more content heavy. And we'll come back to any questions that are unanswered. Jenny, I'll just to introduce you very briefly. So part of the reason why we got in touch and asked you to speak today is because we've been aware and working with the Good Practice Mentor program before, and think they're a really good kind of benchmark for working in communities and overcoming some barriers to engaging with support services and advice services, something that we're always working to do. I won't take any of your content, obviously, but just want to say thank you so much for coming today, and hopefully feeds into some of what Becky and Rebecca talked about earlier in terms of that kind of on-the-ground knowledge that you can use to support clients. I will now be quiet and allow you to share your slides.
Great, thank you so much. Morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm really hoping that I don't get kicked off Zoom. I've been kicked off a couple of times this morning. If I do, I'll try and get back on as quickly as possible. But clearly my laptop is just having one of those days. So as Molly said, I'm from the Good Practice Mentor team. My name's Jenny. I'm based in Sheffield, and I'm from South Yorkshire Housing Association. I'll explain kind of where I fit into the team as we go through. So the aims of the Good Practice Mentors are really to kind of share our good practice to reach, involve and connect with older people. And our current work is really off the back of the Aging Better programme. So I'm sure with all the people in this call, there's some people who will have heard of Aging Better and some that won't, but it was a 6-year national project funded by the National Lottery Community Fund. And it was very much a kind of test and learn project. So from the very beginning, that project was all about finding out what worked and finding out what didn't work when it came to working with older people in the community. There was 14 national partners originally, so in 14 different locations, South Yorkshire Housing Association being the lead in Sheffield. And we kind of worked together, but also in our local areas with the older people in our communities. When I say test and learn, that was a real underpinning kind of function of the Aging Better programme. So we were really given the go-ahead to sort of just figure out what we wanted to do. There was no, when we set off, we didn't know where we were going to end up. And that was a really amazing kind of permission given to us by the lottery, really. And it's not something you get very often when you're working in 6-year projects. At the end of that 6 years, the National Lottery asked us to do something called the Good Practice Mentors, which was to go out and share that learning, share what we'd found out, share what worked when it came to working with older people. And we're now in a kind of continuation of that project from a different funder. We've got 3 years, we're a year in, and we're just going out and working with absolutely anybody across the country to help kind of help you in your journey in working with older people to reduce loneliness and isolation. So as I said, we're sharing a kind of plethora of learning. There's now only 4 partners taking part in this current bit of the project, and I'll talk about who they are as we go through, but we still are bringing learning from all 14 areas, even though there's only 4 of us now. And we really want to help you overcome your challenges and sort of reaching, connecting, finding older people in your local communities and bringing them into the work that you might already be doing. My slides always get a little bit sticky, so bear with me. I never want to jump from the first one to the next one. There we go. So as I mentioned, there's only 4 of us now. So we've got Age UK Camden, Leeds Older People's Forum, Torbay Communities and South Yorkshire Housing Association. And really, as I've said, everything that we're doing, everything we're sharing is around tackling loneliness. And I suppose for some people, yes, you might be working with older people, but loneliness might be sort of a concept that you don't think about all the time. So I wanted to give a sort of couple of examples of what we're talking about, what we're thinking about. So it's this real kind of subjective feeling. So loneliness is absolutely different for everybody and people will experience it in different ways. It's often a very unwelcome feeling. I'm not sure there's many people who would say that loneliness is a feeling that they enjoy. Perhaps being alone, yes, but there's a difference between sort of being alone and loneliness. And it's this idea that when we have a lack or a loss of companionship and a mismatch between the quality and the quantity of the relationships that we want and those that we have, that's where loneliness occurs. So it often happens when, yes, that we kind of tip over from being alone into actually time that is forced on us to be alone that we don't want anymore, and we're kind of seeking connection. We often think about loneliness as a sort of downward spiral, and this content came out of the Leeds Older People's Forum work they did as part of their 7-year Aging Better programme. So it's when we have kind of personal circumstances, a precipitating event or both, and precipitating events are things that kind of can lead to loneliness happening. So it might be kind of death of a partner, it might be moving house, it might be a change in our physical ability that means we can't get out and about anymore. That might be a precipitating event to loneliness. That then leads to us having kind of more negative thoughts and feelings around ourselves, around our perception of ourselves, and around our interaction with others. That influences our behaviour and leads to our withdrawal or our contact from others, which means we've then kind of got less activity, more negative thoughts and despair, which in turn leads to further withdrawal and increased severity of those feelings of loneliness. So you can see that the kind of the downward spiral of loneliness can be very hard to come back out of. And you might need kind of support to bring yourself back out of that spiral. Loneliness is also really affecting the way that people are kind of walking into situations. So if people are experiencing loneliness, every time they have an interaction with another person, it's going to mean that they are perhaps oversensitive to cues. They're going to have a tendency to misinterpret or to exaggerate the intent of other people. So people are always kind of judging themselves through the lens of this loneliness or this perceived loneliness, which means that with that further withdrawal from social situations might occur. The work that the good practice mentors are doing, I suppose, helps us think about all the things within this triangle. So we have resources and support that might help you with your own work on a one-to-one basis. So if you support people, older people in the community on a one-to-one basis, we have support and resources that might help you with that. We also have lots and lots of support around group dynamics, bringing people into group spaces in the community. And our overall aim, what we would love to achieve, is this sort of population-wide addressing loneliness. We would really love for there to be sort of strategic change, structural change, system change on how we work with people to reduce loneliness and isolation. So we have resources to fit everything within that, and I'm going to give you a very brief overview of those, and then some signposting to how you can find out a little bit more. Our overall aims are really to give you some innovative ways of working. For some people in this call, they won't be, there'll be things that you're already doing, but for lots of people, we're finding that the test and learn approach, the co-production approach, and the outreach approach are quite new ways of working, but it's also about working in a more collaborative way with your community. Sorry, I can't get my words out this morning. So it's about thinking collaboratively with the people in your community, with the organizations in your community. So thinking how that kind of collaboration has a bit of a cross-section in the communities that you're in. We really want to drive culture change in the way that systems and communities interact. So we want to really help people move from fixing or saving support systems to that kind of empowering older people to doing things for themselves, for each other, and taking the lead in their support and their care. Thinking about the sort of current climate that people are operating in, we want to help people really adapt, flex, and thrive. So making the most of what you already have. We recognise that people don't have the ability to add capacity in lots of environments. So it's how we can help you with your current capacity and make the most of the people that you've got, the funding that you've got, the time that you've got. How can you make small changes to the things that you're doing that will kind of build your capacity? And we really want to help encourage collaborative partnership working between VCSEs and sort of wider organisations and the community to help tackle isolation and loneliness from more perspectives and more effectively. So bringing more people into that work and those conversations.
Oh, poor Jenny. I think we've lost her. I'm just going to give her a second to see if she can get back into the room. While I'm giving her that bit of time, I'll just chat through the slides I was going to finish with, so that we can make sure that we don't have to repeat those at the end, and hopefully that gives Jenny maximum time to come back into the room. So I'll just quickly share my screen. So as Becky did mention, I do have a slide on our Fuel Poverty Forum. So if you are interested and want to be part of solutions around local fuel poverty and how we work together, and the Fuel Poverty Forums are a really excellent place to meet people in your area who are working in the front line, who are policy decision makers, who can affect change, and who also have great ideas around what needs to happen locally. I'm obviously biased, but I'll be hosting the Eastern Fuel Poverty Forum, which will be excellent. That's being held in the University of Suffolk. But as you can see, there's pretty good coverage across the country of a range of different fuel poverty forums. And they always come as well with a policy update and some really interesting, inspirational local speakers as well. So please do consider signing up for one of those if you'd like to learn a bit more. I should also mention there is a networking lunch, which I think is always worth bringing up. Rebecca mentioned before as well that NEA does do support for community events, whether it's a presentation, a coffee morning, a energy saving cooking session, energy bingo, whatever it may be. We love to support on community events. So please do get in touch. There is a speaker request link which will go out with the slides that we share. And if you like to use that for any of your events coming up, please do. And we can see if there's availability to support your events. It goes without saying that we are a membership organisation and that we work in partnership with everyone that we work with. I won't read out all the details of our membership programs, but just know that there is a range of services available, including a free membership, and that just means that you have updates of what is happening in the policy landscape, what training is available. So a few people have mentioned in the Q&A that training courses that they're interested in are booked up. Please sign up to our membership. You'll get updates when new courses are placed online, which is very frequent. It gives you an idea of what we're doing around particularly the policy landscape in this next year will be very interesting. And just all sorts of updates from the sector. Also a chance to have your thoughts shared and feed into Fuel Poverty on a national basis. This is my thank you slide. I will send out the evaluation survey, and please do fill it out. Today's agenda was based off of suggestions from the last survey. Jenny, I can see you now. I just thought I'd do my ending slides in the hopes that you'll be able to get back in. I haven't given up on you at all.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're all right. Do you want to try and share again?
Yeah, do you want to just let me know where I got cut off? Because my slides hid that I'd been kicked out, so I was just merrily talking away.
If you pop your slides up, because I was answering questions in the Q&A, I might have to see them.
Brill. So sorry, everyone. Not quite sure what's going on today.
If you go down, I think it was this slide. Am I right? Sorry, I was answering questions in the Q&A.
That's fine.
So I was not able to fully pay attention because I was typing and then you froze for a bit while I was in middle answering a question.
Hopefully I don't get kicked out again. If I do, I'm very, very sorry. I was saying before I got kicked off, we've split our support into sort of 5 distinct areas, and we do see people go through a bit of a journey through our support. So they might access us for one area of support, and that leads to them then kind of getting support from another one of the partners. So I'm going to talk you through what those 5 areas might be. So we have support and we have workshops and resources around reaching older people. So thinking about your diversity and your inclusion, how do you find and reach those people in the community who you don't even know and you haven't met yet and you're just not accessing? So what are those kind of informal places that you can meet and engage with people and nudge them into your more formal settings and the work that you would like to involve them in? This area of support mostly comes from Age UK Camden, and Jo can come and do outreach and door knocking support in your communities with you in person, but she also can offer lots of support around comms, kind of adapting your language and adapting your approach via online sessions. The second area that I'll talk about when my slides unstick themselves, so how to kind of help people feel welcomed and connected. So I hinted earlier that we had lots of support around group work and kind of group support in the community, and Leeds Older People's Forum from Leeds, this is their kind of area of specialism. So thinking about how you create the right environment for participation, how you help people overcome barriers to taking part and even walking in the door for the first time. And then once people are there in your groups and in your community spaces, how you create this warm welcome. And we have something called the Warm Welcome Toolkit, which was actually developed by Age UK Camden as part of their Aging Better offer, but is now being used by Leeds within their work. So thinking about how you involve people in groups, how you use volunteers, how you really give people kind of roles and responsibilities within a group to help them feel connected to each other. We then have support from Torbay communities around creating sustainable partnerships. So thinking about how you bring together different parts of the community to create this sort of ecosystem of support. And Torbay communities really specialise in this sort of front door.
Think we lost Jenny again, Molly.
I think so too. I was trying to wait it out to see if it was just a glitch. Oh, poor Jenny. Okay, Well, we have finished the session, the slides that we were going to share. What I'll do is I'll ask Jenny if she'd be happy to share her slides. And we'll post those out with the evaluation links and everything else. Really sorry about the tech problems, everyone, and thank you for your patience in putting up with those. I'll stay on this webinar, and obviously Jenny may join again, but I think sounds like her internet's not reliable. So I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone for attending, massive thank you to everyone who spoke or asked questions. And yeah, please do give feedback on the evaluation form and let us know what you'd like to see next time. And I'll obviously if anyone on the call would like to say their thanks or anything, I'll let them jump in now.
Thank you very much, everybody. Some really interesting questions in the chat. Really, really good session.
Yeah, thank you so much for attending, everyone, and really great questions. And thank you also to Keith for the invitation for Colchester as well. I love a castle, I love a zoo, so yeah, I might go. I don't know why it came in my head, but that's what we're doing this summer. So thank you so much, everyone. You've got our emails. If you have any further questions, please do feel free. If you've got any questions about training, do feel free to email me.
Oh, and a massive thank you to our two interpreters, Tom and John. Really appreciate you being here. I know it was varied content, and massively grateful to you for yeah, just being here and making this session accessible.
Thanks, Molly.
I'm just checking through the Q&A, lots of really nice thank yous. Apology, I mean, people are probably quite pleased to end 10 minutes early, but just to say, we'll send out everything that Jenny was going to speak about and a little bit more information, as well as Q&A that we couldn't get to today, any of the slides that we can send out, and the evaluation link. So all that will be coming hopefully in the next few days. Oh, and the link to the YouTube recorded presentation.